Welcome to the Better Business, Better Life podcast. Terry DuPont is the founder of DuPont Advisory Group, a group dedicated to providing comprehensive services to successful business owners, medical, and other professionals. Terry has top-of-the-table status in the prestigious International $1 Million Roundtable, placing him among the top 0.1% of all professional financial advisors in the world. Terry's philosophy is, I've learned that I grow and prosper more by focusing on the success of others, rather than fretting over my own. Terry is a certified financial professional with the Institute of Financial Wellness, an advisor for the Power of Zero Taxes in Retirement, chartered retirement plans specialist, certified wealth preservation planner, and certified philanthropic developer. On the podcast, Terry brings together experts in their field who have succeeded in building their business to share their secrets with you. And now, here's your host, Terry DuPont.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Better Business, Better Life, Building on Your Success. And I'm your host, Terry DuPont. Today, and this week, we have Paul Shugar with us. Paul is a state and probate litigation attorney, and he's from in the Cleveland area. Paul, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Terry. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Well, we love having you. Yeah, and you look great, by the way. So
thank you. I'm doing my best here. You got me before Thanksgiving dinner, so I'll probably be about 5 to 10 pounds heavier if I do it right here in a couple days.
Okay, well, we'll get it out of the way then. So, Paul, I just mentioned to our audience who you are and what you do, but could you tell me and our listeners a little more about what you do and why you started your career?
So for me, I was actually a sports journalist. I graduated from Ohio University's journalism school in 2003 and worked for newspapers in Florida, Washington State, even North Carolina before I started realizing that there was just going to be issues around 2007 and 8 when we had the economic crisis. I read a lot about what companies were doing to come out on the other side, and they were investing. They said the companies that really could invest in themselves during that time were going to be more successful when the recession ended. And that's exactly what I did. I went to law school. I'm from the Ohio area. I moved up to Cleveland and went to law school, and then was fortunate enough to start clerking for the law firm where I'm at currently, which is Reminger. They are a full service civil defense firm, do a lot of insurance defense, medical malpractice defense, different areas like this. But interestingly, they had a very, we like to call ourselves a boutique group inside our medium-sized firm of just probate litigation department. And probate litigation, as we're probably going to discuss, is just an exploding field. There's about $55 trillion that are going to pass between generations, especially with the passing of the baby boomers. And that's just some estimates that I've read. I've heard bigger numbers. I've heard 60 trillion. I've heard 45 trillion, but the average number I hear is usually around $55 trillion that are passing. And unfortunately, when you involve humans and family dynamics into those issues, litigation tends to happen, especially when you have that large amounts of money. Sometimes it's, and people always say you got to have an elevator speech as an attorney about what you do, but it's really hard. I did a presentation a week ago about probate litigation and probate litigation avoidance, and we just had a list of the different type of things we do. And it was a little, even, for me, shocking when I saw the list all put together of different types of things. Sometimes it's guardianships, issues that start pre-death, conservatorships in certain states. Britney Spears made this a very, very famous topic, because she was under guardianship. Somebody else is making decisions. It happens a lot in an elderly person. They might lose decision-making capacity and might not have their estate plan or powers of attorney in order, or the powers of attorney simply might not work for one reason or another. That can create tugs of war. Sometimes a very common thing is beneficiary designations. People may have their will, they may have their trust, but they might not realize that their bank accounts are payable on death to their ex-wife or somebody else that they didn't change, which creates federal and state law issues. So sometimes we're fighting about beneficiary designation. Sometimes we're actually just an old-fashioned will contest or a trust contest or construing those documents. So there's a lot of different issues that can arise, before death, upon death. And again, with families, I think, especially where I'm coming from in Ohio, a lot of people, the economy in Ohio wasn't good when you graduated in 2003. So people have really spread out. You can't, anywhere I went, I always met different Ohioans, whether it was North Carolina, Florida, anywhere else. We spread out, and but those issues, that time and distance among people, I really think it also can create some of the interesting family dynamics, a lack of communication, and the other issues that I see with probate litigation, because this area, just between the money and everything else, it's exploding. When I joined my firm in 2013 and got my license as a lawyer, we were about 6 or 7 probate litigation attorneys. We are now up to 12, 13, maybe even 14 at this point. I should check. We just had somebody pass the bar. And I think that just speaks, in Ohio, I think 1 in 3 or excuse me, that might be a little high. I've seen 1 in 5 Ohioans are going to be 65 and older. We're one of those gray states. I think it's a phenomenon that, we're going to see in this country for the next 20, 30 years, where it's just going to be a very old population, a lot of wealth, very successful generation passing money down. And that's, in a nutshell, I'm going to be the person that when issues arise, our practice group is going to get involved, usually one way or another.
You started talking a few statistics there, and then there's about 10,000 of us baby boomers on average retiring every day until the year 2033. Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And you're talking about a generation that has created a significant amount of wealth for itself, had very successful, was really ahead, but now is also a stress generation because they're hitting retirement, fixed income in a high interest rate environment, a lot of different issues for them to deal with. And, on top of that generation, we're talking about a generation, I'm borderline Gen X and millennial myself, so I do remember days, or I grew up mostly, I didn't get my first cell phone until college, so it was I remember that life. But there's a different type of communication, when I'm doing planning for somebody who's a millennial or Gen Z, or helping them with their estate litigation problems, they're very different communicators than a baby boomer is, who might be a little closer to the vest. They might take a view, it's my money. And these communication breakdowns are without a doubt the number one cause of the issues that I'm seeing. And I have to expect, the hardest part about being in some of these disputes, sometimes I'm helping people who, are just clearly being financially exploited. Their caregiver got on their accounts, taking money from them, doing different things. But a lot of times it's just a family fight. And it's really unfortunate, because I would expect the decedent didn't spend their whole entire life working and saving up that nest egg to be able to pass on an inheritance, which is still, even with 55 trillion passing, that's a hard thing to do for some people. And be stuck in that situation where the money's going to a lawyer or somebody else because they haven't been, because of some family issue that they couldn't head off at the pass prior to death.
I'd like to go back a second, if you don't mind, and
Sure.
And before you were an attorney. So your background as an award-winning journalist before making the transition into law is quite fascinating. And so my question, I guess, is, how do you believe your experiences as a reporter influences your approach to estate, trust, and probate litigation today?
It's narrative. To me, in my line of work, who establishes the narrative and does it first and can do it well with supported facts, not just what I say, but actually point to, black and white records, whether they be medical records to show somebody had dementia, didn't know what they were doing when they signed important documents, or financial records showing, transactions that just don't make sense. It's the ability to establish a narrative, and then just also be comfortable talking to people. As a journalist, you would just have to cold call people and build a rapport and get them to trust you. It's not, dissimilar to what's going on here. We got to talk. We have to be able to interview, and we have to be able to pull out information, and then we have to verify that information, whether it's true or not. And while it's definitely two different styles of writing, the writing background and being, and that's what I say to people, the amount of writing practice that I've had being a journalist for newspapers and, slash websites, where they were transitioning at the time, I would have to basically write something every single day, for an audience. And, that type of writing practice is just invaluable, when you're a lawyer.
I agree. Good answer. Yeah, that was awesome. What has been your biggest challenge during that transition?
The biggest transition for me was just my parents aren't litigious people, and neither was I. I had not ever been in a lawsuit before really getting barred and being actually able to represent somebody. I had some law clerk experience, had gotten to watch from the sidelines. But it's an adjustment, working for people who are in a terrible situation. Most people don't want to hire an attorney. A lot of our people, that is the nice thing. I get to actually work with people. And it's a lot of one and done. They come in, they have a problem, they need help solving it, or they need someone to help them through the process. And, you know, death, which is usually the triggering event for somebody needing somebody like me, comes in a lot of ways. Sometimes I'm dealing with people who have unfortunately committed suicide. Sometimes I've had 3 to 4 different murders in my career, which create all sorts of different, emotional issues that are going on beside. And my ability to create empathy with those people and understand with them, what their limitations are, but also be true with them about these are the strengths, these are also the weaknesses, and this is what I'm trying to do as an advocacy position. I think that was the hardest thing, because as a journalist, we're supposed to be Switzerland. We're neutral. We just want to hear the story. I want to hear your side. I want to hear the other side. And then I might want to talk to 2 or 3 different people, or do, different research and verify it. And again, there is a place for that in the law, but it's not the same. My goal is trying to find pieces of the narrative, and yeah, I may come across pieces of the narrative, but it's not my job maybe to make that very clear. If the court asks me about it, I have a duty of candor, I got to disclose it, but it's really the other job side to craft their narrative and put it together, where my narrative is centered on one client. So it took some adjustment, without a doubt, to just get used to, being focused on not trying to get the whole story, which is still important as a lawyer, but it's more about getting the pieces and parts that are beneficial to my client, and being able to put that out there and demonstrate to a judge or a jury, whoever's the trier of fact. In my cases, I end up usually having both. I want to be able to put a narrative in front of them that they are going to understand and find more believable when they're making the ultimate determination, are they going to find for my client or not?
Okay. Paul, as someone who regularly lectures on estate and trust administration, what do you believe are the most common misconceptions, or even overlooked aspects when it comes to estate planning, particularly in the context of litigation?
one thing for estate planning is a very high volume business. A lot of larger law firms have unfortunately gotten away from it because they don't view it as an economic producer. And I really think estate planning is in a transition phase. A lot of them are in that older generation, and are struggling, because maybe they have gone out on their own and been very, very successful, but training that next generation is a difficult task for them to have their own succession planning. So estate planners, I think, are really struggling to find that next generation. Additionally, because of some of the issues with having a high volume practice, and also just because clients, again, most people die, statistically without a will, or any sort of estate plan whatsoever, which creates its own set of nightmares. Anybody listening to this, if you don't have an estate plan, you should consider at least whether that, talking to an attorney about that. But a lot of times people, it's not an exciting thing to go buy. It's not like going to buy a new car when you got to go buy an estate plan. You get a bunch of documents that really you're not going to be around to see executed when they are executed one day. So it's kind of it feels good to put it in the desk and, and know you have it done. But it's also one of those things that, just like a car, it needs to be maintained. It needs regular checkups. It needs to be, it needs a full plan. And I just, again, estate planners, to me, they a lot of times they just, people want flat rates. They want to just pay, $3 to $5 grand for their estate plan, set it, forget it, and go from there. And that's the problem I see a lot of times on probating estate plans, that were done in the 90s, where, we're talking about a completely different tax environment than what we are dealing with now. And then on top of that, interest rates, depending on how sophisticated, of an estate you're dealing with, there could be issues there, taxes, everything else. And overall, one big critique that I have, certain people, they might want to do Medicaid planning or asset protection or do other different goals. There's a lot of different things that an estate planner can do that I don't think a lot of people think about. If you're a professional as a doctor, for example, or even a lawyer like me, asset protection is very important just because of, certain risks that you could be exposed to from playing in traffic, like an estate planner can do, or a doctor can do. If you make a mistake, it can be costly. And on top of that, estate planners, to me, sometimes are selling trusts because they want to sell another document. It sounds cool to have a trust, right? But do you really need it? Is a trust going to work out? Is it going to create tax headaches? On top of that, as a litigator, when you trust, and I do some estate planning, and when I talk to somebody and they want to set up a trust, I say, do you have someone you trust completely who is going to follow that document? Because I've had those phone calls with clients, potential clients. They never retain me, but potential people. They say, hey, we want to retain you. We need help with administering this trust. Here's a copy of the document. Please look at it, so we can ask you questions. I start talking to them about it, and then they start telling me, well, before the decedent died, she told me this, she told me that, she wants this to happen. Do you think we can do that? And I look at the document as like, you're really stuck with the document and where it is. And they listen and they politely say they understand. Then I don't hear from those people again. And what concerns me is I think there's I see a lot of it because of my job, but I always say we may be seeing, 5% of the trust fraud that ends up in litigation because people, just they don't know, or they don't get attorneys, or by the time they do, the money's gone and it's not economical for the attorney to be involved. So, I mean, I think those are some of the big pitfalls, is that estate planners should be trying to position themselves as someone similar to what you probably do, trying to be in your clients' lives, trying to be that person. Yeah.
I just will comment on what you just mentioned previously about the people that didn't hire you. it's because, in my mind, my opinion, you weren't telling them what they wanted to hear, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And
They want
unfortunately,
you to
they
break
didn't.
the trust. Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. And they didn't, and they want to break the trust. I'm a lawyer. I can't help people break the law. And that's a situation. I would be assisting them in doing that. And I'm just worried that trust, because again, people are trying to avoid probate, right? There can be great reasons to avoid probate. Privacy is one of them. But, a lot of times I always hear it, well, you want to avoid the costs of probate. And I'm like, it's $500.
Yeah.
That's not a huge thing to have court supervision to make sure that the document is carried out properly, or the court will get involved and do certain things. That can be a small price to pay if you don't have the right person. Now, if your best friend's an attorney, or you have a great financial advisor, or somebody else who's in the right age group or something like that, who can be a good fit for your fiduciary position, great. And somebody who's not going to risk their professional licenses to enrich themselves or do whatever they want to do after you die, great. But I do think there is a tendency by estate planners who are just interested in maybe selling another document that maybe they don't need. And again, spending that time, and again, because they do flat rates, because that's what clients want, maybe spend some time, make it an hourly situation, and show them what you can do. Show them the different options, talk with clients, and spend time with them, because most people who need an estate plan, and really everybody does, but the people who are really worried about it, it's not an area to go cheap. You really need to be one, you need to make sure you have a qualified person doing it. You should have a team, you should have an estate planner, financial advisor, different people all involved, your accountant. You need to really do that and then stay on top of it. And again, it's just the nature of the business and human nature as well. It's not all the estate planner's fault. I just think people are hesitant sometimes to really want to spend time on this, even when I have this conversation with high net worth planners
Not
who,
something that people just sit around, can't wait to do my estate plan, right?
correct.
You
Yeah,
get it
you're
all.
not excited. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, some people say, well, there's no immediate gratification to it, but there is some, because after you do it, it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy, but it's not like going out and buying that new car, right? So,
Correct. You're exactly right. And that's, I think, part of the problem.
yeah, exactly. Paul, in your experience, what are some of the key elements necessary for successful representation in estate and trust litigation cases? That's part one. Part two is, are there specific skills or qualities that you find particularly crucial in achieving positive outcomes for your clients?
I think some of the main skills is you have to be able to listen. You have to also be able to evaluate the economics of the situation. Most often when people come to me, they're coming to me because they're suspicious for one reason or another. And sometimes they turn into cases, sometimes they don't. When I'm representing a fiduciary, I say transparency will set you free. If you are clear, if you are, try to communicate, over communicate almost at the beginning, and show you're trying to work with the beneficiary as more of a handshake relationship instead of dictating to the beneficiary, you're going to get off on a more positive footing. And I think the same thing goes with an attorney. The clients that I think I have the best relationships with, it's because we've discussed the issues, we've framed the issues, and we've created a plan. And sometimes that plan has multiple steps, but it really is about framing the issues, getting a plan, and not being afraid to change the plan or take the time to communicate. When people, it is hard in this day and age. I can communicate by my clients by email, text, and everything else, but trying not to over communicate, but also at the same time make sure they know the key information they know, because that's my role. I'm an advisor. They get to make their own decisions. I can tell them what I think, and they may disagree with me. And sometimes that comes to a point where I might not be the right client for you or right attorney for you because I think you're litigating a case, a $20,000 problem, like it's a $3 million problem, and it's not going to be economical for you. And being honest and truthful with the clients, not telling them what they want to hear all the time. That's not my job. And they even say that, well, it doesn't sound like you're representing me very much in these. I was like, look, when I'm talking to opposing counsel, completely different person. You, on the other hand, need to understand both the strengths and the weaknesses so you can make some decisions here and what the risk is. Because when we go to trial, lots of things could happen. It's a 50-50 coin flip. You really need to be on board on being able to make this decision, because if I only tell you everything's sunshine and rainbows, you're going to think you're going to go to trial and have a 100% chance of success.
A lot of
I'm just
disappointment.
yes, there's always a risk at trial, no matter what. On top of that, there could be appeals. There could be all sorts of different issues. More people are getting involved, the more chance for human error. So you got to be careful about that. And so I think that second part. What was the first part of your question again?
The first part was the experience that the key elements necessary for successful representation, estate, and trust litigation. I think you answered it.
Yeah, I hit a little bit of both. I did a good job.
Yeah,
I tried to keep them
both.
separate.
You answered them both by answering one, so you did a good job.
There we go. There we go.
What is a mistake that you see way too many people make that's hard to undo as it relates to asset planning, wealth management, retirement planning, that involves the litigation of all of that on the estate side?
I think one of the most common mistakes is appointing the wrong person as the fiduciary. Two siblings might never get along, but the parent wants to believe that they're going to figure it out. I also see a lot of planning issues in split marriage situations, second or third marriages, kids from a previous marriage, not going through the proper steps of maybe a prenuptial agreement, but also, separating out counsel. I know that can be difficult conversations when you're getting married, and having a second spouse, but a lot of people don't plan through those issues as well. And that is a really common litigation thing, because you just have, interests that may not align, especially, everybody may get along great while you're there, but if you take, the father out of the relationship, and, you're leaving a second wife, and the stepchildren from a previous marriage, tensions can get high quickly, and people just don't have the right fiduciaries in place. They don't have the right planning in place. They maybe are getting themselves stuck, or again, haven't changed the documents. Prenuptial agreements and stuff also can be very rigid and sometimes backfire. Ohio actually just brought in postnuptial agreements. Many states already have them. Ohio finally did it this year. That's going to help. But, the biggest pitfall is just, in marketing. If you're an estate planning attorney or a financial advisor, it's pretty easy marketing just to remind everybody each year, hey, it's, I call it their estate plan birthday. I send them just a simple letter, happy birthday to your estate plan. You need to look at everything, look at your beneficiary designations. Has anything changed? Has your nominated, the person you nominated to get your children, should something happen to you, did they get divorced? And maybe you're not as comfortable with them doing that. Maybe the person you nominated as fiduciary declared bankruptcy and is in some rough, financial ways. Maybe they're not the right person anymore. And I put some of those in my birthday letter just to try to get people thinking. Now, do I hear back from a lot of people? No, a lot of people like to set it and forget it. But I feel like I'm at least serving them And if they do come back, I do get occasional like people like, yeah, this plan isn't going to work. They pull the documents out, they think about what they've done, and they realize that life isn't static in any possible way. I mean, a big saying is people plan and God laughs.
Mhm.
It's a very common, Yiddish phrase for a reason, and I believe it
Mhm.
wholeheartedly because, you really need to put yourself in a position to be flexible and don't think of your estate plan as something rigid. Has your family situation changed? Maybe one son isn't as successful as the other two and you've had to help them out. Maybe you've gotten involved in starting a business with one or something else like that. You need to be thinking about these issues and what happens after you die. And again, a lot of us, it's just a hard thought, even for myself, to think about what life would be like without me there. And, the more you can get into that thought exercise, whether you're an estate planner or just somebody making an estate plan, um, it'll help head off those issues, ahead of time. Because that's the problem. A lot of us, we may talk about it. We may talk about it out loud among our family members. We're taping this before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's a common time where a lot of people talk about, what's going to happen when I'm gone and everything else. And, or they might be at one son's house and not the other son's house telling people, hey, this is what I wanted, what I want to happen after death. And then they have a different story from the other son. And yeah. And I always tell people, if you're making plans for after death, the
Yeah.
people you want everybody in the room. You want
Mhm.
everybody in the room. And I know, again, this is a hard thing for sometimes the baby boomers and that older generation. They really don't, it's our business. They're very private, different generation than most. But I tell them, Thanksgiving is a great time. If you got everybody home, sit down, talk with them about what's going on, and maybe pull out the documents. Where are they? What do they say? Who is the lawyer? Who should you contact? And go through them, because you might actually, especially getting, some other people's input, might go, ooh, maybe I do need to change this. Maybe this plan doesn't work anymore, and be flexible about it. Because just saying, oh, I got a will, divides everything equally among my 4 children, I'm done. Life is a lot more complicated than that, in my experience.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. Yeah. Um, Paul, how do you define success?
Success to me is, you know, someone coming to you, in my line of work, because they know you can solve the problem. I knew I was starting to have success in my field when people would just call me, or I would be referred by other counsel because they knew that I could help with this problem and had the right fit. And success, to me, it's about contributing to the thought leadership in your industry, being involved, in spending some of that time. Anybody can just be a lawyer and bill hours, but are you going to spend time looking at your area of law and trying to be on the front edge, getting involved in, for me, it was getting involved in legislative committees in Ohio that helped shape probate law, and being able to be in front of it, because not only then am I contributing to myself, but I'm also contributing to my community. And when you start feeling that, it's a stressful job. It's so stressful, a lot of work, a lot of emotion, but and a lot of people, I think, younger lawyers, especially if you're watching something like this, I see a lot of drawback. People want to talk about work-life balance and all sorts of different issues. And to me, that's when I knew I had success, is because it just became part of my life. I know my billable hours puts food on the table for me and my family, but I'm also, able to set my schedule, control the hours that I'm working. I'm not going to be, after I get done today, I'm not planning to be answering many emails until Monday morning next week. But finding those schedules and everything else. Now, could somebody call me with an emergency in certain situations? And maybe I can find time for them. That's the thing, is trying to find that balance. To me, I put that in, taking, when I go down to a legislative committee meeting, I might take my kids as well and my family as well, and we might spend time doing something else and traveling. You got to try to integrate your work, your passion. And if you can't integrate what you do into your daily life, you're probably in the wrong field, and you're not going to have the type of success you want, because you could be very successful, but if you hate it and you are constantly, to me, it's that Monday morning or that Sunday night, like, oh, I just don't want to go back to this. If you're in that type of situation, something's not good. And that's what yeah, I work a lot of hours, but I love what I do. And that's the big thing to me, is if you find that type of success where you're not only just, people are coming to you, you can establish yourself, but you also feel like you still have that work-life balance. You still have time for other things that matter to you, or more importantly, the ability to make sure you have time for those things. That's really where success is at. And I really do think the younger generation, I get it, it's hard. You want that day one. It just doesn't exist. I didn't, even, I really loved being a journalist, but there were a lot of things I didn't like about it. I worked a lot of long hours in that job as well, and weren't maybe seeing the fruits of it as I do now. And that's the thing. It took working as a journalist for, about 10 years, followed by going to law school, and which I didn't really enjoy that much, followed by, starting out trying to reestablish yourself in a new career, which I didn't really enjoy that much at first. But being able to do that, and the pandemic was a big thing for me. It was a moment where it kind of forced me to reset, think about my schedule and everything else. Like, do I need to come into the office every single day? We're both working from home today, doing this interview. Um, that's the new reality we're in. And but again, do I need to be in the office to try to train the next generation? Do I need to still do certain things? Yes, it's a very important part of what we do. And like I said, you just got to find balance. To just say, I want to only work from home, maybe that's not the right fit. You really need to feel it out, spend some time. And I like to do it around this time of year, end of the year. Am I happy? What can I do better next year? What changes? What are my goals? Spend time on that, because if you spend time on that, you'll start thinking of yourself as more successful, regardless of what else is going on, because you'll be happy, and happiness is the key to success. You can be successful if you're not happy and you're saying you're successful, something's wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything you wish to share that we haven't talked about, Paul?
I think we've hit the main things. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on and talk to you about some of these issues. I do think, if you're dealing with probate litigation issues, I'm only licensed in Ohio, but it's one of those situations that it's a field that is growing. It's not uncommon. And sometimes, just if you're a beneficiary of a large estate or trust, having an attorney to ask questions to or consult with, again, it might save you a lot of headaches down the road. Don't be scared of it. There's a lot of family dynamics that are rough. Everyone, I think, has that in their family a little bit. So, don't be ashamed of it. Don't be sad about it. Just, do what's best. Make your best financial decision. If you're going to inherit $2 million, paying an attorney 5 to 10K to babysit and make sure it's done right, or walk you through the issues, or put a team together, that's important. Don't just assume, to be cheap about everything. Use your lawyers. This is your life. Get an estate planning lawyer, get a financial advisor. Those costs, surround yourself with people who know more than what you know, which I think is the theme of this podcast. And one of the main reasons I was drawn to it as well. It's a mantra of mine.
Um, Obviously, your name, contact information is at the bottom of the screen. But would you like to let our audience know where they can go learn more about you?
Yeah, if you just Google my name, Paul Shugar, and go to the Reminger website, we actually have a great resource. If you're an attorney interested in estate and trust litigation, we have a great blog, a lot of great writing. We discuss about the different issues that we're dealing with in our field, and it's a broad field. I really cannot spend. It would have to be a much longer interview to spend that much time talking about everything. But you should visit our website, look at some of those issues, and I'm always happy. A lot of our organizations, we really do look at other states, what they're doing, especially on the legislative side. So I'm always interested in meeting people who are in this field or doing these type of issues and talking to them. So don't hesitate to reach out. And again, I really appreciate you having me on, Terry.
Well, Paul, I'm sorry. Hi, Paul. It was great to have you on. Really enjoyed it. And it was a great topic and did a good job. Awesome. So, hey, everybody, thanks for joining us this week on Better Business, Better Life, Building on Your Success. I'm your host, Terry DuPont. Come back next week. Take care.
This has been the Better Business, Better Life, Building on Your Success podcast. If you have questions about creating tax-free wealth and income, forward-looking tax mitigation, strategic risk mitigation, wealth preservation and legacy planning, and advanced financial management, go to DuPontAdvisory.com or email terry@DuPontAdvisory.com.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.